She was the mother of my children, my muse, my morning warmth in silk robes and lavender skin. That very morning, she kissed me like she couldn't wait to get more. Hours later, I found her in our pool, riding her best friend like I never mattered. And in that moment, I realized, love isn't blind, it's just foolish. There's a specific kind of peace that wraps itself around you when you believe, truly believe, that your life is finally right. Not perfect. Not exciting. Just right. That quiet confidence that comes from waking up beside someone whose breath you've memorized, whose rhythms have become your own. That was me. I thought I had everything a man could ever ask for. I wasn't chasing fame anymore, it had found me. My books sold. My name carried weight. But more than that, I had her. And for a long time, that was all I needed. We met in the most unlikely way, at a book reading in Lagos. It was during a humid April evening, the air sticky and full of restless chatter. I had just come off a panel discussion about modern African literature, and I was still adjusting my collar when I saw her, dark braids, long fingers wrapped around a paper cup, wearing a wine-colored dress that looked like it had been dipped in dusk. She wasn't there for me. She came with a friend who had a crush on another author, but she lingered after the event, staring at the cover of my latest book like it held secrets. I approached her. She smiled, just slightly. I asked her what she thought of the reading. She said, "You're a lot less pretentious than I thought you'd be." That was our first exchange. And somehow, that biting honesty was the most romantic thing I'd ever heard. We ended up talking for over 2 hours that night. I missed my flight back to Abuja, and I didn't care. She had a laugh that filled the room. Not loud, full. Like she meant it. Like she wasn't afraid of taking up space. She told me she was a visual artist, though she hadn't created anything serious in years. I told her I was a writer, though I often felt like a fraud. Somehow, that made us feel like equals. Within months, we were inseparable. I invited her to Paris for a book tour. She painted in the hotel room while I scribbled notes for what would become my bestseller. We made love on creaky beds in Florence and ate gelato on balconies in Barcelona. We fought, we forgave, we laughed until it hurt. And when I proposed to her under a sycamore tree on Victoria Island, she didn't cry, she just said, "About time," and kissed me like we were already a lifetime in. The wedding was small. Just 20 guests, no pomp, no fluff. I still remember her walking barefoot down that makeshift aisle in Santorini, the hem of her white linen dress brushing against sun-warmed stones. I read her a poem instead of vows. She slipped a ring on my finger and whispered, "You'll never get rid of me now." God, how I wish that had been true. After the wedding, we moved into a modest duplex in Maitama, then eventually upgraded to the mansion in Asakoro. A publisher in New York signed me for a 3-book deal after my second novel went viral. It was pure luck, but it changed everything. Money rolled in. We built the life most people only dreamed of, 4 bedrooms, a rooftop garden, a tennis court she never used, and that pool, the goddamned pool, that I had custom built just for her. She loved to swim. Said it reminded her of childhood. Her father taught her in a river in Enugu. She would float for hours in silence, eyes closed, hands spread out like she was trying to embrace the sky. I used to watch her from the kitchen window, sipping black coffee, wondering how a woman so serene had ever said yes to a man like me. She stopped painting eventually. Said it was a phase. She claimed she'd rather curate beauty than create it. So she became a homemaker, by choice. That's what she told everyone. And I supported her, not just financially, but emotionally. I believed in her happiness. I thought that was what love meant. And it wasn't performative. I didn't do it to be noble. I wanted her to live freely, to be surrounded by inspiration. We filled our home with art and music and wine. We hosted writers, poets, dancers. I even tolerated her favorite musician, some melancholic French cellist, despite finding his music depressingly pretentious. I tolerated him because she would close her eyes when he played and sway like the world had stopped. And I'd be damned if I didn't want her to feel that way forever. The sex? Still great. Better than ever, if I'm honest. That's what haunts me most. We hadn't drifted apart. Not emotionally. Not physically. Just that very morning, she had come out of the shower dripping, hair soaked, skin gleaming, and she wrapped herself around me like she couldn't get close enough. I remember thinking, I'm the luckiest man alive. I even joked that she was going to get me fired. I had an important meeting with my publisher and had to change my entire outfit afterwards. Shirt, tie, even the goddamn socks. She laughed, said, I'd ruin your whole career if it meant one more hour with you. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Nothing was broken. There were no signs. No distance. No coldness. She kissed me on my way out the door with the kind of heat that said, to be continued. And I left the house that morning already planning how to sneak back in early, to pick up where we left off. That's why, when I pulled into the driveway 3 hours later, smiling like a man who had everything, I didn't notice the second car parked behind the gate. That's why, when I stepped into the kitchen and saw 2 half-drunk glasses of sangria on the counter, hers, and someone else's, my heart didn't sink immediately. That's why, when I looked out the glass doors toward the pool, I didn't expect to see what I saw. Because back then, everything still felt right. I hadn't realized yet that I'd been living in a lie of my own making, a fantasy I mistook for a foundation. And in 3 seconds, it would all come crashing down. One of the things that still baffles me, that keeps me up at night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above our marriage bed, is just how normal it all felt right up until the very end. There were no warning signs. No sudden cold shoulders. No complaints. If anything, our marriage felt like it was settling into that beautiful middle phase, the part no one writes poems about, but everyone secretly hopes for. We were in rhythm. In sync. That strange, golden harmony between knowing someone too well and still wanting to discover more. She was affectionate. Affectionate in ways that didn't feel forced. She'd rub my back when I wrote for too long and forgot to eat. She'd leave me little notes in the margin of my manuscripts, nothing about the story, just comments like, "This made me think of that trip to Zanzibar." Or, "God, your mind is sexy." We still laughed. Often. Sometimes for no reason at all. We had inside jokes, the kind that lived in glances and raised eyebrows, with no need for words. She knew exactly how I took my coffee, the precise degree I liked the windows cracked at night, how I always needed to sleep on the side of the bed closest to the door, some primitive instinct to protect her, I guess. And she let me. She let me play the role of the man, the provider, the protector. God, she played her role so well too. I never questioned her. I didn't need to. Every Friday evening, we had what she called candle dinners. No phones. No talking about work. No interruptions. Just food, wine, and music, always vinyl, never digital. Nina Simone. Sod. Sometimes, when the mood hit just right, we'd end the night slow dancing in the kitchen, my hands under her shirt, her lips brushing my ear as she whispered, "How did I get so lucky?" I used to ask myself the same question. Our friends envied us. They said we were the couple others wanted to be. At parties, they'd always find us tucked away in a corner, heads close, laughing about something no one else would understand. She once told me that we were like 2 stars caught in the same orbit. I believed her. Hell, I still want to believe her. And then there was him. The best friend. Her so-called brother. He'd been around forever. Long before I entered the picture. They met at university. From what she told me, he had a crush on her back then, but it fizzled quickly, or so she said. He was her safe space. The person she called when things were overwhelming. The one who got her out of a deep depression after her mother passed. I respected that. I didn't like it, but I respected it. I'll admit, at first, I was wary of him. Any man would be. He was tall, charming in a lazy sort of way, always knowing exactly when to step into a room and when to fade into the background. He wasn't a looker, not in the traditional sense, but he had charisma, the kind that doesn't shout, just hums beneath the surface. And women love that kind of man. I knew that much. Still, he had a girlfriend when I came into the picture. A stunning one, too, part Lebanese, part Yoruba, with legs that didn't quit. They eventually married. We even went on double dates, the four of us sipping cocktails and talking about our wild 20s as if they were some distant, harmless past. I even asked him to be one of my groomsmen at our wedding. She insisted. He's family, she said. You marrying me means you're marrying him too. I didn't argue. I didn't want to start the marriage with a fight over something that seemed so harmless. And truthfully, once I got to know him, I relaxed. He was funny. Smart. We shared a mutual love for sci-fi films and chess. We bonded enough that I stopped seeing him as a threat. That was my first mistake. He was always around. Birthdays. Holidays. Random Tuesday nights when he'd drop by, with a bottle of wine. They'd talk in the kitchen while I watched TV. Sometimes I'd hear them laugh through the walls, a laugh that was a little too long, a little too intimate, but I chalked it up to history. To friendship. She never once gave me a reason not to trust her. And I was never the jealous type. At least, not before. Still, I remember one night, maybe a year before the day in the pool, when he showed up after we had argued. I don't even remember what the argument was about, something trivial, probably. But she was upset. He showed up with takeout and a playlist of sad songs she used to love. I stayed in my study that night, typing away at a chapter one didn't care about, pretending I wasn't listening to them through the thin walls. At one point I heard her laugh. That laugh again, full and free. And then silence. Long, dragging silence. It stretched too long to be comfortable. I almost got up. I almost walked into the room to see what was going on. But I didn't. I told myself, don't be that guy. The paranoid one. The controlling one. Besides, she would never cheat. Not her. Not my wife. I was so sure of that. So blindly, hopelessly sure. Looking back now, I wonder how many signs I missed. How many small, strange moments I ignored simply because I didn't want to see them for what they were. They say hindsight is 20/20, but in love, it's more like watching a horror movie in reverse. Everything feels normal until it doesn't. And even then, you keep telling yourself it's nothing. Just shadows. Just wind. It started with glances. Little, meaningless looks between her and him. Quick exchanges that lasted a second too long. Sometimes I'd catch them smiling at each other during a story being told at dinner. A story that didn't involve either of them. I'd see that shared grin, the kind that says, "Remember that time?" And I'd feel a flicker of something in my gut, not quite jealousy, more like exclusion. But they had history. That's what I told myself. She'd known him for over a decade. They had jokes I wasn't part of, memories that predated me. What kind of insecure man resents that? So I let it go. I let it go when she started dressing a little differently on the days he came over. More casual, but deliberate, an off-the-shoulder blouse here, a touch more lip gloss there. Nothing overtly sexual, just enough to make me notice. Enough to make me feel something I didn't want to acknowledge. I let it go when she laughed harder at his jokes than mine. When they huddled close in the kitchen, whispering about something they swore I wouldn't care about. When he started showing up unannounced more frequently, always with a new bottle of wine, always with a casual, "Hope I'm not interrupting." I let it go when she insisted I cancel a weekend trip to London because she wanted us to slow down and spend more quality time together. Only for her to have him over for drinks that Friday night, while I holed up in my study, pretending to write. I let it all go. Because I trusted her. Because she had never given me a reason not to. There was one night, a specific moment, that still claws at me in the dark. It was a stormy Thursday. Power had gone out briefly, and we were lighting candles around the house. She was in the bathroom, lighting one on the vanity, when I walked past the door and saw her phone light up on the counter. A message from him flashed across the screen. Nothing suggestive. Just him. Still thinking about what you said. What had she said? I asked her casually. She was brushing her hair, eyes in the mirror. What did you say to Tund? I asked. She blinked. Just once. Oh, nothing important. I was just telling him about a dream I had. I laughed it off, made some joke about her being the neighborhood oracle now. But my stomach turned. That night, we made love. Slow, deliberate, the kind of intimacy that makes you forget the rest of the world exists. And afterward, while she lay on my chest tracing patterns with her fingertip, she whispered, Do you ever feel like something's changing? What do you mean? I asked, my hand in her hair. She paused. Like the world. Or maybe just us. Like we're on the edge of something. I smiled. We're always changing. That's the good part. That's what keeps it alive. She kissed my chest. Yeah. I guess. She fell asleep like that. Peaceful. Naked. Warm. And I stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering what exactly she had meant. Still, I didn't worry. Not really. We were good. We had sex. We had laughter. We had candlelight and whispered I love yous. She was still leaving me notes in my books. She still reached for my hand in public. There were no screaming matches. No icy silences. No locked phones or sudden disappearances. So when she started asking for more me time, I didn't question it. I think I want to start painting again, she told me one afternoon, swirling her tea in a ceramic mug. Just for myself. No pressure. No expectations. I was thrilled. I encouraged her. Bought her supplies. Cleared out the sunroom for her. I even bought her a new easel, the expensive kind, mahogany, with brass fittings. She kissed me on the cheek and said I was the best husband in the world. She started spending hours in that room. Not every day, but often enough. She always locked the door, said it helped her focus. I never questioned it. Sometimes I'd walk past and hear music playing, the low hum of voices, occasionally even laughter. I assumed she was watching shows or maybe talking to friends. I never once tried to open the door. The irony is, I still don't know if anything happened there. Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. What I do know is this: something shifted. Slowly. Quietly. Like a foundation settling in ways you don't notice until the walls begin to crack. She was still kind. Still loving. But there was a distance in her eyes some days, like she was looking through me instead of at me. Like she was remembering something, or someone, and it pulled her just slightly away from the present. I told myself all couples go through phases. I told myself not to be paranoid. That intimacy has seasons. That her need for space was natural, even healthy. But inside, deep in some buried part of my brain, a siren had started to wail. Soft at first, but persistent. Not enough to wake me. Just enough to whisper, "Something is coming." And still, I had no idea how close it was. How sudden. How violent. Because nothing, in the world could have prepared me for what I walked into that afternoon. The day my life ended didn't begin with doom. It began with sex. That's the part that makes this all so much worse. That morning was slow, intimate, the kind of lovemaking that makes you believe, foolishly, fatally, that everything is still okay. She'd just gotten out of the shower, droplets clinging to her like jewels. No robe. No towel. Just that easy, predatory way she walked over to me while I was still half-dressed in my suit pants. "I want you to be late," she whispered, her skin still warm from the water, her lips dragging along my neck like a secret. And I was. I was so late I had to change my shirt, tie, and jacket. She ruined them with water and lotion and perfume and whatever spell she knew how to cast on me when she wanted to pull me in. I remember standing in front of the mirror afterward, breathless and flushed, telling her I was going to get fired if she kept this up. She laughed. Told me to blame her if I did. Said, "I'll just take care of you. Like a real housewife should." I kissed her again. Once on the forehead, once on her lips, and then I left, still smiling, still high on the kind of intimacy you don't get from someone who's about to destroy you. The meeting with my publisher was supposed to run till 6. That was the plan. But around 2:30, my editor called to say our last session was cancelled, a scheduling error or some nonsense. Whatever it was, I had the rest of the day to myself. Most people would have gone to a bar, or maybe visited a friend, or run some errands. I went home. Because all I could think about was her. Still naked in my head. Still sticky on my skin. I wanted to pick up where we left off, maybe take her in the kitchen this time, right against the granite countertop. That was the level of passion I felt walking into my house that afternoon. There was music playing. That was the first sign. Low, rhythmic, something jazzy. Something playful. Not unusual, but louder than she usually played it. I thought maybe she was painting. Maybe she was in the mood again. Maybe today was going to be one of those days. I stepped into the kitchen. 2 glasses of sangria. Fresh fruit floating near the rims. Condensation still crawling down the sides. 1 lipstick print on 1 glass. A smudge on the other. Her wine. Someone else's mouth. My stomach turned. I told myself it could be a friend. Her sister. A neighbor. A drop-in. Not a man. Not him. But my feet were already moving, too fast for me to lie to myself. The hallway opened into the sunroom, the glass doors casting fractured light onto the marble floors. I walked past them. And there, framed perfectly by the tall windows, was the pool. Our pool. She was in it. Not alone. She was riding him. Straddling him in the water, her head thrown back, hair slicked down her back like an erotic painting. Her arms around his neck. His hands gripping her hips. They moved like this wasn't their first time. Like this was home for them. My breath caught in my throat so fast, I thought I was going to pass out. They didn't see me. I stood there. In the kitchen. Behind the glass. For 32 minutes. I counted. 32 minutes I watched the woman I devoted my life to, the one I made love to that very morning, fuck someone else in my pool. In our pool. With the same moans she used for me. With the same rhythm. With the same mouth she'd used to kiss my collarbone just hours earlier. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even move. I just stood. Until my legs shook. Until my vision blurred. Until I found myself gripping the edge of the marble counter, staring at the knife rack like it was whispering my name. I reached for it. A long chef's blade. The one she used to cut lemons. My hand hovered. Inches from the handle. And I swear to God I saw it, the version of me that would have taken it. That would have stormed out there, full of fury, and carved blood into the blue. I could have done it. I would have. I wanted to. But then I saw his face. Not my brother. Not a colleague. Not some faceless stranger. Him. Her best friend. The brother I'd learned to trust. The one who gave a speech at our wedding. The one who toasted us, called me lucky, called her luminous. The man I shook hands with over grilled meat and cheap beer, who told me I was one of the good ones. The man she swore she never even saw that way. He grinned at her, then kissed her, deep, familiar, filthy. And she kissed him back like the world didn't exist. I let go of the counter. Let go of the blade. And I left. I didn't say a word. Didn't slam the door. Didn't alert them that they'd been caught. I just walked out of my own house like a ghost, my bones hollow, my heart a silent scream in my chest. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Because if I did, something inside me was going to snap. Something I wouldn't be able to fix. I don't remember driving away. I don't remember taking my foot off the brake, turning the wheel, pulling out of the driveway, nothing. 1 minute I was watching my wife's naked body twist in betrayal, water catching sunlight on her skin like a cruel kind of spotlight, and the next minute I was somewhere else. I know I drove. I know I must have stopped at red lights, signaled, merged, did all the mundane things drivers do. But in my head, I was still there. Still watching. Still drowning. I drove until the Abuja skyline was a smudge in my rearview mirror. Ended up at Apo Hill, sitting on the edge of a forgotten cliff, surrounded by dust and wind and the slow, golden slide of the sun. I could smell burnt tires in the distance. Someone was playing a radio far off, a static blurred melody I couldn't place. I sat on the hood of my car and just stared. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't scream or punch anything, though I could feel the violence in my chest building like a pressure cooker. Instead, I sat there in eerie silence, like a man watching the wreckage of his own plane from the tarmac. It's strange, the things that go through your mind when your heart's been butchered. You'd think I would have been thinking about the betrayal, about her naked on top of him, about the pool we'd swum in together 1,000 times. But no. You know what I thought about. I thought about the last birthday I planned for her. She mentioned in passing once, just once, that she'd always wanted to eat strawberries and drink champagne on a boat. Something small and silly. But I remembered. I chartered a boat on Jabi Lake, set up the whole thing, the fruit, the flute glasses, the damn red parasol to block the sun. She cried when she saw it. Told me no one had ever listened to her that closely before. That's what I thought about. That moment. The look in her eyes. Was that a lie, too? Had it already started by then? I don't know what broke me more, the cheating itself, or the thought that everything, every kiss, every smile, every whispered, "I love you," might have just been part of a performance. A beautiful lie I bought into like a fool buying snake oil at full price. Eventually, I made my way to a hotel. One of those sleek, faceless ones downtown where no one asks questions. I checked in under a fake name, handed over my card like it weighed 100 pounds, and asked for a room with a view and a quiet floor. I couldn't bear the idea of hearing a couple next door laughing, moaning, loving. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. The room felt like a tomb. Too white. Too clean. Too calm. Like it didn't know, or didn't care, that the man sitting on the edge of the bed had just watched his whole life implode. I sat there, fully clothed, staring at nothing, until the moon was halfway across the sky. My phone buzzed once. An email from my publisher. Some subject line about a radio interview next week. I didn't open it. I tossed the phone face down and didn't touch it for hours. I didn't want to hear from anyone. Especially not her. I expected her to call. To text. To wonder where I'd gone. She didn't. That silence screamed louder than any confession ever could. The next morning, I couldn't go home. The thought of it, of walking back into that house, of touching anything she had touched, made my skin crawl. I didn't even want to smell her shampoo on the pillow. I needed space. I needed time. But most of all, I needed answers. Because if there's one thing worse than betrayal, it's not knowing the extent of it. Not knowing if you were fooled for a moment, or for years. I had no plan for vengeance, not then. No fantasies of blood or justice. All I wanted was clarity. To know what was real, if anything. To understand the depth of the lie I'd been living in. Because if it had been going on for years, if I'd been eating with him, laughing with him, shaking the hand of the man who was secretly screwing my wife behind my back, then I wasn't just betrayed. I was humiliated. Played. Publicly. Privately. Entirely. So I did what writers do best. I investigated. I observed. Quietly. With precision. I turned my life into a case study. First, I went through our iCloud backup. We rarely used it. But an old iPad was still connected. A forgotten relic that became my entry point into a new, uglier version of my reality. Photos. Not graphic. Not stupid enough for that. But suggestive. Him on our deck. Shirtless. Flipping grilled fish on my barbecue. Her, posing in the mirror with a cheeky grin, same mirror I'd kissed her in front of 100 times. A video. 15 seconds long. They were splashing in the pool. She giggled, slipped, he caught her. And just before the video cut off, she said, "Don't post this. He'll kill us." He. Me. The fact that she knew, that she said it out loud, that was the part that stuck in my throat like glass. She knew exactly what she was doing. Next came the financial trail. I combed through our joint account like a forensic analyst. Hundreds of transactions. Mostly mundane. Then I found it. A booking at Zuma Rock Resort. 2 nights. Suite with a private hot tub. Paid with our money. Labeled, "Cousin's Wellness Trip." I remember that weekend. She said she needed space. That her cousin had invited her for a spiritual retreat. She came back glowing. She said the mountain air had done wonders for her soul. Now I knew what had really taken her breath away. I sat there in that hotel room, staring at the proof, and something inside me fractured. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because it wasn't enough to catch them. I needed to break her mask. To make her say it. Admit it. Strip away the lies one word at a time until she stood naked in front of me, not her body, but her truth. That would be my justice. And I was going to get it. I went home on the 3rd day. Not because I was ready. Not because I'd found peace. But because rage needs a cage, and our house, our carefully curated palace of lies, was the only place I could think clearly. The moment I stepped through the door, I was hit with the smell of her. Not perfume. Not sweat. Her, the scent of body lotion and linen and something floral she always wore to bed. It clung to the curtains, the throw pillows, the goddamn air itself. It made my stomach twist. The house was spotless. Like it had been cleaned in a panic. The wine glasses were gone. The music had been silenced. No note. No apology. Nothing. She was in the kitchen. Wearing one of those silky robes I bought her from a boutique in Vienna. The ones that barely hung onto her shoulders, the ones that always got me into trouble. She looked up as I walked in, and for a brief moment, her eyes flickered, something between guilt and hope, like she couldn't decide if she was about to be caught or forgiven. "You're back," she said softly, stepping toward me. "I was worried." I said nothing. Just dropped my bag at the door and walked past her into the living room. She followed me like a shadow. "I didn't know where you went," she added. "I called. I texted. You didn't call." I cut in coldly. She paused. I wasn't sure what to say. That's when I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was nervous. Hiding it well, but I knew her. The way her fingers fussed with the hem of her robe. The way her weight shifted subtly from foot to foot. She was waiting. For a fight. For an explanation. For a sign that I knew something. I gave her none. Instead, I sat down, pulled out my laptop, and asked her what we had in the fridge for dinner. Her mouth parted slightly. I could see the confusion in her face. But she didn't push. I can make pasta," she murmured. "Or that stew you like?" I nodded without looking up. "Stew's fine." That's how the next few days went. Pretending. But it wasn't for her benefit. It was for mine. Because I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her in a fit of rage. I wasn't going to scream, or throw things, or slap papers on the table like a bad soap opera. No. That would give her power. Let her cry, spin it, twist it, pull at the fraying thread of my love and weave it into another apology I'd be tempted to believe. I needed clarity. So I became a stranger in my own home. I watched. Listened. Took mental notes. Studied her like a character I hadn't yet figured out. She didn't suspect a thing. My silence, my calm, it lulled her into a false sense of security. She started humming again. Painting in the sunroom. Texting more often. She thought she was safe. I told myself I was gathering evidence. Giving her rope. Letting her hang herself. But the truth? I just wanted to see how long she'd lie to my face. Each morning, we played house, kissed, shared breakfast. She'd ask about my writing. I'd lie about what I was working on. I told her I was drafting a thriller, something dark, psychological. She laughed. Those always mess with your head. She had no idea. At night, I barely touched her. And she noticed. She'd reach for me in bed, her fingers brushing my shoulder, tentative. But I'd feign sleep. Or turn away. Or say I was tired. She began to shrink inward, little by little, retreating into herself like a plant withering under false light. And still, not a word. Not a confession. Not a crack. Not even a shadow of remorse. So I waited longer. I checked the cameras. The security logs. I checked her location history. Found nothing. No more visits. No messages left behind. She'd cleaned her tracks. But I'd seen enough. I knew. And then one evening, exactly 1 week after the pool, she came to me with a bottle of wine and a smile I used to call home. I miss you, she said, climbing into my lap. You've been distant. I looked at her. God, she was beautiful. The kind of beauty that isn't just skin deep, the kind that ruins men, makes them believe in forever, makes them write poetry and surrender everything they are. But she was poison. A perfect storm in soft skin. I've been writing, I said. Getting into character. She tilted her head. Character? For the new book. What's it about? I traced a finger down her collarbone, leaned in close, and whispered, It's about a man who finds out his wife's been fucking her best friend in their swimming pool. Her breath caught. There. That was it. That flicker. That horror behind her eyes. She pulled back. What are you talking about? I didn't speak. I just stared. And in that stare, I gave her everything, the truth, the knowing, the disgust, the fury I had held behind a dam all week long. She stepped off my lap like it burned her. You're not making sense. Don't lie to me, I said calmly. Not now. We're past that. Her eyes welled. She reached for me. And for the first time in our marriage, I stepped away. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough to let her know the spell had broken. She didn't lie. Not at first. That's what struck me most in those first few moments. Not her tears, not the pathetic robes slipping off her shoulder like she was in some tragic play, not the stunned expression on her face that mirrored mine from that afternoon by the glass. It was the honesty. She looked at me like a child caught stealing. No defense. Just wide, guilty eyes and the trembling kind of silence that begged for mercy. You knew, she said quietly. Not a question. Just an exhausted realization. How long? I didn't answer. Instead, I walked past her, past the couch we used to curl up on for movie nights, past the dining table where we hosted Christmas dinners and toasted anniversaries. My hand trailed the back of one of the chairs, the same one he once sat in when I poured him vintage red wine and asked if he wanted another helping of grilled shrimp. The memory of it made my stomach twist. I turned back to face her. She hadn't moved. She looked smaller now. Her hair was undone, face bare, eyes puffy. She wasn't wearing her usual armor of charm and composure. And still, I didn't feel sorry for her. Do you love him? I asked. The words sounded clinical. Not even angry. Just hollow. She blinked. Her lips parted. Closed. Then opened again. I don't know. That hurt more than a yes. More than anything else, actually. Because it meant it wasn't just lust. It wasn't just a stupid mistake, or a desperate impulse. It meant there was something real in what she did, even if she didn't understand it. Something she let grow in the cracks of what we had, something she fed in the shadows while I was making plans for our future. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said softly. How far did it go? I asked. Be specific. She hesitated. Don't protect me, I said. Don't lie. Don't sugarcoat. If we're going to burn this house down, I want to know exactly what set the fire. She nodded slowly. She was trembling now, like a glass holding back boiling water. Before we were married, she began, and I stopped breathing. What? She swallowed. Before we were married it started. Again. Meaning it had happened before. She looked away, ashamed. When we were engaged, he reached out. Said he missed me. That he still thought about me. I didn't plan to respond, but I did. Just once. It turned into dinner. And then. I didn't speak. My fingers curled around the edge of the countertop. It felt like if I didn't hold on to something, I'd float away. Up and out of my own skin. I told myself it was closure, she continued. But it wasn't. I saw him again. A few weeks later. We kissed. I told him it was wrong. That I was marrying you. He said he was happy for me. I believed that was the end. Was it? She shook her head. I laughed. Bitter and low. So you slept with him before our wedding? During our engagement? While we were planning our vows? While I was meeting with florists and caterers and writing the poem I read to you on that cliff in Santorini, you were screwing your best friend behind my back. She sobbed. I didn't care. It didn't mean anything, she said. I didn't love him. I don't know. No, you do, I snapped. You just don't want to admit it out loud. She opened her mouth. Closed it. I could see her grasping, searching for the right version of herself to present next, the one that would keep me from walking out, from turning this into something final. She didn't want to win me back because she loved me. She wanted to win because losing would mean facing herself. How long has it been going on since the wedding? A year, she whispered. 12 months. 365 days of lies. I tried to stop, she added quickly. He got married. You remember. We all went to his wedding. I thought it was finally done. I didn't talk to him for months. But then what? He started showing up again. We'd have coffee. I missed the friendship. The easy conversations. And eventually. You missed his dick too, I said flatly. She flinched. Hard. You let me be friends with him, I continued. You brought him into our home. Sat him at our table. Asked me to make him a groomsman at our wedding. Do you understand the level of deception you had to maintain to keep this going? She nodded, crying harder now. I hate myself. I do too, I said. That broke her. She collapsed into the armchair, sobbing uncontrollably, trying to reach for me with one trembling hand. I stepped away. I'll do anything, she said between sobs. Therapy. Counseling. Public confession. I'll sign whatever. Just don't leave. I should have left that day by the pool, I said. Should have walked back in and told you both to get the hell out. But I didn't. I waited. I washed. I gave you time to do the one decent thing, confess. You didn't. I was afraid, she whispered. Of what? Me? The man who trusted you so completely he never once checked your phone. Never once questioned your me time? The man who bought you an easel and a sunroom because you said you needed more space for your creativity? You feared me? She cried harder. I can't live without you. Yes, you can, I said coldly. And you will. She reached for my hand again. I stared at it like it was a dead thing. I don't know who I am without you, she said, and for a moment, just a moment, her voice sounded so small, so real, that I felt something tighten in my chest. But it wasn't love. It was grief. Because I had loved her. Deeply. Entirely. I had built a life around her. Given her my name. My trust. My soul. And now I knew, without a doubt, that none of it had been enough. I believe you, I said. That you don't know who you are without me. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. But I do know who I am without you. And I turned, walked upstairs, and packed a bag. I packed in silence. The kind of silence that isn't just quiet, but heavy. Charged. Every time I unzipped a drawer, folded a shirt, or unhooked a tie, it felt like I was unmaking something sacred. Undoing vows. Dismantling memories. Every movement a symbolic gesture, not of rage but resolve. She stood at the doorway like a ghost, arms wrapped around herself, eyes red, lips trembling. "You're not really leaving?" she whispered. I didn't respond. She took a step forward. "Where will you go?" Still, I said nothing. She sat on the edge of the bed, our bed, and that's when I looked at her. Really looked. And it hit me. I didn't recognize her anymore. The woman I loved wasn't real. She'd been replaced, long ago, by a mirror image that wore her voice and body like a disguise. "Say something," she pleaded. I zipped my duffel bag and tossed in the last of my socks. "There's nothing left to say. I said I'd do anything." "You said a lot of things," I snapped, turning to her now, my tone cold and final. "You said he was like a brother. You said you wanted a simple life. You said you couldn't imagine a future without me. Every word, every kiss, every time you smiled across the dinner table at me while you were still letting him inside you, it was all a lie. It wasn't." I raised a hand. "Don't. Please don't. You've said enough." The only reason I hadn't exploded earlier, hadn't torn the room apart, was because my rage had finally run its course. It had burned through me like wildfire and left only scorched earth behind. I was tired. More than tired. I was hollow. And that scared me more than anything. Because when you're angry, at least there's something inside you. Something fighting. But once that goes, when you feel nothing, that's when you know you've truly been broken. She followed me downstairs. Barefoot again. I wondered if she even realized how much of a performance that was, the vulnerable, tear-streaked woman in silk and silence, too fragile to be left. I stepped into my office one last time. Looked around at the framed copies of my first editions, the photos of us from book tours, London, Johannesburg, Tokyo. There was even one from the night she threw a surprise party for my second novel launch. She wore that blue dress that clung to her like starlight. I stared at it, not with longing, but with detachment. That man in the photo didn't exist anymore. I pulled the USB drive from the safe drawer, the one with my next manuscript on it, and tucked it into my pocket. She was waiting for me by the door. "I still love you," she said. I paused, my hand on the knob. "And I'll always hate that," I replied. I walked out. The sun had set. The air was thick and warm. The kind of evening where you expect to smell barbecues, hear kids riding bikes, couples laughing over wine. But tonight, everything felt eerily still. Like the world knew something sacred had just been dismantled inside that house. I drove to a small serviced apartment I kept in Garki, a relic from the early days of my career. I used to write there when I needed solitude. It was sparse. Simple. A bed. A desk. A kitchen with flickering lights and an old fan that groaned like it was dying. But it was mine. And most importantly, it had never known her. The first thing I did was open my laptop. Not to write, but to delete. Photos. Videos. Shared playlists. Our wedding montage. The folder of scanned love notes I'd kept because I thought they meant something. I backed them up on a drive I'd never look at again. Then I erased them from my machines, one by one, until it was like she never existed in my digital world. And still, she lingered in my head. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and her voice echoed like a ghost's. "I still love you." But that was the problem. She did. In her own broken, twisted way. And that made it worse. Because if she had just stopped loving me, I could have written it off. Cold, clean, surgical. But she hadn't stopped. She had simply decided to love two men at once. Or maybe she never really chose, maybe she drifted, like a ship without a captain, letting whichever current was strongest that day take the wheel. Either way, she'd wrecked us. The next morning I called my lawyer. His name was Femi. A sharp, soft-spoken man with a memory like a vault and a mind like a scalpel. I told him I wanted to talk prenups, property, divorce strategy. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll send you a draft." He knew. Everyone who knew us would know soon enough. And that was another strange grief, the loss of perception. For years we had been the couple others admired. The stable ones. The romantic ones. The ones who hosted dinner parties where people asked for relationship advice. We were aspirational. And now we were just another cliché. Best-selling author and his cheating wife. I started writing that night. Not the novel I'd been working on, that could wait. I started writing the truth. A memoir, maybe. Or a personal reckoning. Not for publication. Not for fame. Just for me. Because I needed to see the whole picture. Needed to chart the descent. Needed to document the man I used to be before he vanished. The nights got quieter after that. Not easier. Not yet. But quieter. I drank less. Slept less. Thought more. I called my mother. I told her I was moving out. She asked if everything was okay. I said no. She said, "Do you want to come home?" And for the first time since I left, I almost said yes. But I didn't. Because this time, this hurt, I needed to carry myself. It's strange what survives the fire. You think it'll be the big things, the house, the marriage certificate, the photos. But sometimes it's smaller than that. A mug she gave you on your birthday, chipped at the rim. A scarf she wore when you traveled together to Nairobi. A single email saved in a folder you forgot to delete, an old message from her titled, "Love Letter, Don't Laugh." You tell yourself you'll erase it all. Burn it to ash. But then you don't. Because even in ruin, there's a part of you that holds on. Not because you want her back, God, no, but because those pieces remind you of who you were before the damage. They're not about her anymore. They're about you. Who you were. Who you had to become. Weeks passed. The legal process moved faster than I expected. My lawyer, Femi, was surgical. Clinical. He spoke with the kind of measured detachment I envied. I asked for the house. Not because I wanted it, I didn't. It had become a mausoleum, every room haunted by what I'd lost. But I wanted her to feel the loss. I wanted her to watch me take the home she defiled and turn it into something else. Something clean. Or at least, honest. She didn't fight me. She signed everything. Post-nup. Divorce agreement. Waiver of spousal support. Full confession affidavit attached for legal protection, not because I asked for it, but because her lawyer insisted. I didn't speak to her once during the process. Not directly. She sent messages, hundreds of them. At first they were frantic. Long voice notes, late-night texts, desperate apologies that bordered on hysteria. Then they became more measured. Reflective. Then finally quiet. And then one day, a box showed up at the apartment. No return address. Just my name, written in her handwriting. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity is a dangerous drug. Inside, there were 5 things. Our wedding photo, framed in silver, with a post-it stuck to the back that said, "I still believe this was real." A small notebook, the one she used to write ideas in, where she'd scribble quotes she loved, dreams she had, pieces of poetry she never finished. The last page said, "I'm sorry for destroying the best thing I've ever had. If you never read this, I deserve it." The necklace I gave her on our 4th anniversary. The one with the tiny gold pen charm. She wore it almost every day. I didn't know she'd taken it off. A USB drive. Labeled, "For you." I haven't plugged it in. I don't think I ever will. A letter. 32 pages. Handwritten. Rambling. Confessional. Equal parts apology and post-mortem. She told the full truth, how it started, when, why. How long she'd been lying. She confessed things I didn't know. Things I didn't want to know. Some of it made me sick. Some of it made me feel sorry for her. But none of it changed anything. I burned the letter in a fire pit that night. Poured whiskey over it when it was halfway to ash. I watched the ink curl into smoke and disappear. And when it was done, I sat in the dark and said goodbye, not to her, but to the man I had been. The man who believed in her. The man who used to plan romantic scavenger hunts across the city just to make her smile. Who learned how to cook one of her mother's traditional dishes because she missed home. The man who used to wake up early just to watch her sleep for a while before his writing day began. That man was dead. And I had buried him with his own hands. But here's the thing they never tell you about grief: it's not just about the death. It's about the after. The silence. The rebuild. I started running again. Not for fitness, for sanity. I started waking up before sunrise, pounding pavement through quiet streets. I needed to sweat. To hurt in ways I could control. My legs burned, my chest heaved, my thoughts slowed. I called my father one day and told him everything. He didn't say much. Just, "I'm proud of you for walking away." Coming from a man who stayed in a loveless marriage for 23 years, that meant something. One night, I sat down and finished my novel. Not the one I'd started before everything collapsed, a new one. Raw. Unfiltered. A story about a man betrayed not just by his wife, but by time, by memory, by himself. My publisher called it unflinching. Said it was my best work yet. Of course it was. Pain sharpens your voice like nothing else. Months passed. She moved out of the city. I heard from a mutual friend that she was living with her sister now, attending therapy. That she'd cut ties with him, her best friend, her lover, her co-conspirator. Apparently he got divorced too. Poetic, really? I didn't ask for more details. I didn't care. Not because I was over it, but because it no longer controlled me. One day, I went back to the house. Alone. It still smelled like her in places. Vanilla and jasmine and ruin. But I didn't flinch. I walked room to room, tracing the scars in the walls, where we'd hung art, where we'd argued, where I once kissed her against the window during a thunderstorm and she said she'd never felt more alive. I stood at the edge of the pool. It looked different now. Not romantic. Not sacred. Just water. Still. Cold. Clean. I knelt down, touched the surface, and felt nothing. And that, more than anything, told me I was free.